Before we get into this lesson, we're going to review place value because we'll be talking about place value when we're looking at how to turn these into their fractions. So we're just going to go over a few different place values. So let's say we've got our decimal here. To the left of the decimal is the ones place, tens, hundreds. And it keeps on going. That's as far as we're going to go on that way. And this is where we're going to talk mostly. So after the decimal to the right is the tenths place. So there is no ones on this side. Hundredths, thousandths, ten thousandths. We're not going to need any further than that for this, but it would go 10,000s, 100,000s, and then it would keep on going from there. So it's the individual, the tens, the hundreds, individual, the tens, the hundreds. All right. So we did our activity where we learned how to convert a repeating decimal into a fraction. So we're just going to start from that, given we already have that information. This is as a review. So this is in the tenths place, and we found our pattern was that we're going to take that number 3 over, when it's in the tenths place, we want 1 less than 10 is 9. So it becomes 3 over 9. If it did not have that repeating bar, if it was just 0.3, that would be 3 tenths. For number 2, there's 4 whole parts in my decimal, so I need to have 4 whole parts in my fraction. And then 67 is going to go on top. That last place value, the 7, is in the hundredths place. 1 less than 100 is 99. But again, we can look at it, what if it did not have the repeating bar? If it did not have the repeating bar, we'd still have 4 whole parts. And then it'd be 67 over, it's in the hundredths place. And that's because if we think the proper way to read this is not 4.67, but it's 4 and 67 hundredths. And the proper way to read this first one we did up here is not 0.3, but it's 3 tenths. Number 3, I have -3 whole parts. And then I have 7, 12. That 2 is in the, it's a third place value, so that's 1,000. So it's in the thousands place, but because it's repeating, instead of being over 1,000, it's going to be over 1 less, so 999. And then we're saving number 4 here for algebra, and we will go over that in a separate lesson. So for the rest of this table is mostly going to be just review from previous years, and we can use a calculator for this. So for number 5, I need to turn 2/5 into a decimal and a percent. So 2/5, well, a fraction bar just means divide, so this really just says 2 divided by 5. We can put that in our calculator, and 2 divided by 5 is 0.4. And then to turn that into a percent is always out of 100, so we could do 2 ways. We could multiply this by 100, and we get 40, so it would be 40%. Or you might remember that the shortcut that some teachers may have told you is we just move the decimal 2 places, and that's how we get that 40%. But what's happening, the reason why that works is because we're multiplying by 100. In row 6, we're starting with the decimal. So let's first go to the percent. So to get a percent, we multiply by 100. So 3.12 times 100 is 312%. To turn it into its fraction, I have 3 whole parts, and then 12, and that's in the hundredths spot. So 3 and 12 hundredths. Row 7, this time we already have a percent. So to get a percent, we multiply by 100. So to undo that and get rid of the percent, we're going to divide by 100. Or, again, in the past, you may have been shown that we can just move the decimal the other direction 2 places. Either way works. 65 divided by 100, or move the decimal point 2 places, you get 0.65. As a decimal, the proper way to read that is 65 hundredths, because that 5 is in the hundredths place. Number 8, I have 2 whole parts in my fraction, so I know I'm going to have 2 whole parts in my decimal. Then all I have to do is put this fraction part, 1/8 or 1 divided by 8 in my calculator, and I end up with 0.125. Well, I don't need the 0 point. I already have my 2 point. So all we need is what comes after the decimal, which is the 125. And then again, if I want to turn that into percent, I would multiply it by 100 or move that decimal 2 times, and we get 212.5%. Always remember to put the percent sign, because 212.5 is not the same thing as 212.5%. So if it's a percent, make sure you put that percent sign there. Row 9, again, we're trying to get rid of a percent, so we would divide by 100, or we move the decimal 2 times, whichever way makes more sense to you, so we get 0.005. And then to turn that into a fraction, 5 over, and then this 5 is in the thousandth spot. So that's 5 over 1,000. It's 1,000 because it's not repeating. If it had been repeating, that would be over that 999. Number 10, row 10, I need to turn 7 into a fraction. I can turn any number into a fraction by putting it over 1. And I can check because 7 divided by 1 is just back to 7. Okay, and then to make it into a percent, we said that we're going to multiply by 100. 7 times 100 is 700, and that's a percent now. Here we're going to throw in those repeating decimals that we were learning about. So I see that 99. As soon as I see that 99, that's telling me that this is repeating. So I have 1 whole part, and then my repeating part is the 2 and the 3. So I put a bar over it to show that it is repeating. When I turn this into a percent, though, I multiply this by 100. However, do not just put 1.23 in your calculator, because that's not really what it is. It's really 1.23232323, and so on. Or what I could do is, if I'm moving that decimal over instead, I could extend this out a little bit before I move my decimal. So now I see that it's 123.23%. Now this one wouldn't be off too far. If we had done it the incorrect way without doing that repeating, we would have gotten 123. So being off by 0.23 is really not that bad. But it is still an incorrect answer. So make sure you do this and you make it that repeating decimal, or in your calculator, you put the 232323 before you times by 100. Same thing for number 12. Let's turn this into its fraction first. So the 8 is repeating, and it is in the 10th place. So it's going to be over 1 less than 10 is 9. Again, because it's repeating, it's going to be over that 9, 99, 999, and so on. 1 less than the place value. Again, we're going to times this by 100 to make our percent, or we can continue writing that pattern of 8s. There's really a bunch of 8s here, but that's what that repeating bar means. So if we're putting it in the calculator, make sure you don't just put 0.8, but make sure you put 0.8888 and give a couple 8s before you hit times 100. Or if you write it out like this, then we move the decimal 2 times, we get 88.89. I'm rounding because I kept 8, so these 8s are going to end up rounding up to a 9. That's where that 9 comes from. If I had just left it, for example, if I had just put in my calculator 0.8 times 100 and forgot about that repeating, we would have gotten 80%. And 80% is a lot less than 88.89%. So again, with these repeating decimals, make sure you are very careful and have those repeating decimals in your calculator before you're multiplying by 100 or before you're moving those decimals.